Hi friends, my name is Debbie and today we're going to be painting loose flowers and mixed media. So let's jump in and get started. We're going to be using a very light color. I decided to use a light pink and I'm just doing sweeping motion strokes. Remember, we're trying to keep the petals to the center, so everything should be pointed to the center, towards the center. And we're using lots of water, a little bit of pink. In this case, I got the magenta color and I added a lot of water. Now I'm dropping a little bit more concentrate color of magenta just in some areas, especially the bottom piece and some of the bottom leaves. Now I'm doing the fluff for the peony and we're just doing like six strokes, adding a little bit more of the darker pink in some areas. If your paper is not blending, don't worry, you just need to add a little bit water to the petals and then you can kind of spread the paint with your brush and it should be just fine. In this case, my paper was getting dry really quickly, so I added a little bit more water and then I went back to the darker color and the sweeping motion with my brush. I use it sideways, I don't use it flat, I use it on the side and it's giving me these nice round kind of petals. For the center, I'm just using cadmium yellow. You can use any yellow that you have. And in this case, I didn't wait. So my paint, when I did the dots, it kind of spread a little bit. I don't mind the look, but then I went back and tried to fix it. You just add a little bit more yellow when the paint is completely dry. If not, you can use wash and you can add a little bit of yellow to the wash, the white wash. And for this other flower, I just did the center and I'm using yellow ochre, and then for the petals I'm using lots of water. I'm trying to make it very light, the light value, and we're just kind of sweeping towards the center. With the brush, make some lines towards the center, towards where the center pieces that we put it first. We're gonna push that towards the center, and I'm adding a little bit more color to the flower and just doing the sweeping motion, sweeping strokes. For the one that is folded, you add a little bit more pigment to it because that one is kind of sideways, so it needs a little bit of the shadow. And if it's too much, just blend it. And then we go back to the center, add a little bit more of the yellow ochre. And if you have a smaller brush, you can use the smaller brush. It would be easier. In this case, I was using the same brush, so I added a little bit of orange to it. And it's blended nice and beautiful because the paint was still wet, so it's blending. It's moving with the paint and the water. So now I'm gonna do another flower on this side. We want to keep some kind of balance. Remember, for the composition, we always try to have odd numbers because it looks better for the eye. So in this case, I'm adding three different flowers. This one is a rose. So for the rose, I start with the center, very light. And then as I'm moving towards the outside, I go skinny with the brush, no pressure, and then I press on the brush, a lot of pressure, and I try to make it kind of diagonal, not very curvy, and that's gonna make a very organic look. It's gonna look more natural. And as you can see, I'm just going around with the brush, doing some petals a little bit more round. I add more pressure, and we want to change colors. We want to have light values and darker values. So I'm going back to the same magenta color. I'm adding the center, and then with the brush I'm going kind of like C strokes, but more like a kind of like a V. They're not so rounded. They have a little bit of the point. So some areas you're gonna go very light on pressure, and then you press on the brush, give more pressure, and that's gonna give you a more natural look for the roses. Then we go back with more magenta. We want to make sure the center has a lot of color. That's where the shadow is more concentrated, and then when it starts to spread to the outside, the petals get lighter. The inside is darker, the outside is going to be lighter. That's where the sunlight hits the petals. So the inside is supposed to be darker. And you can add as many layers as you want. Just make sure you wait a few minutes so the paint won't spread. Otherwise, it's just gonna keep blending and you won't end up with a darker color in the center. So just give it a couple of minutes or so and then go back to more concentrated paint. Like you can see, I do the tip of the brush and then I press on the brush and go again with the tip of the brush and then press again to give more loose petals and adding more magenta to it. I'm just gonna add a few more strokes. Some I just pass the line like horizontal or vertical. I see that this flower needs a little bit more petals on the outside, so I got some water, not too much paint, and I'm just going around with my brush. We want to have some lighter values in the flower and some darker values towards the inside. And you don't need too much paint, just whatever you have in your brush, and just get some water and use that water to go around your flower. Then I'm adding a little bit more magenta. It feels like the center wasn't dark enough, so I'm just going back to it and adding a little bit more color. In this case, I was using more like 70% color. I would say the rest was water, and just going sideways, making some lines, and some areas I press a little bit harder on my brush to get a little bit more of the wider belly of the brush. Now going back to this flower, I got some more yellow ochre. I added a little bit of brown, not too much, just a touch to make my color a little bit darker as a shadow. And I'm going in some of the petals, making some lines, and also in the center to give a little bit more of a texture to the flower and also some more movement to the flowers. And you can add as many lines as you like. I don't like to put too many. Less is better, but it's your flower, it's your choice. You do with them whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. And if I'm going too fast, just pause the video, go back to it whenever you have a chance and you feel more comfortable, and whenever you have your colors ready. So we're just adding a little bit more to this petal because this side is supposed to be kind of folded. So that's where we added the shadow there. Now I'm adding a little bit more yellow to this flower. Like I said, the dots blended a little bit and I needed more yellow. So I'm just adding a little bit more. And then for this part, somehow I lost the place where I was filming. So somehow my paper moved. But I'm just making some lavender flowers, very easy, 5 petals, and some they have 3 petals, and some are just some strokes with your brush, and pretend those are petals. And I'm just going very light with the lavender and just making some marks. And I use the brush sideways pretty much, and sometimes I use the brush flat. And we're just adding some more flowers towards the center. We don't want to have too much white space in the center, so we have to kind of fill in this area. And we're putting this type of flowers. Remember, we have to have, in the composition, we have to have some lighter colors, some darker colors. Same when you're adding your leaves, you're supposed to have different colors of leaves, different values. So if you're using green, make sure you add a little bit of water and do some leaves. Then you add more paint and do some leaves. And that's gonna give you different textures, and it's gonna look more appealing to your eyes. So for the top, I'm gonna be starting with my leaves. The leaves, they're supposed to go like hugging your flowers. They're not supposed to be like a straight stem. Always try to curve it. It looks more natural. So they're supposed to be kind of holding your flowers. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm going very light. Add a little bit of water. And also it's good to have just some strokes in between. Here I'm adding just some dots to give more texture, so it's not just leaves. So we have different types of leaves and kind of branches and things like that. So for the center, I'm adding some green. This is just a sap green, and then I will go back with some more color, different colors of greens. I will have like light green, medium green, and a darker green. So I'm just going with the stems, adding some more petals, and I just use the tip of the brush to make the stem, and then I just press on the belly of the brush, and it's gonna give you your perfect shape for the leaves. We're adding some more up here where the peony is. Just make the stem, and then we're gonna add some leaves for the roses. And for the rose, I just make the shape, and then with the tip of the brush I kind of pull it out, make it kind of like a thorn and like spiky kind of. So I just do it with the tip of the brush, and adding some other leaves on the other side. I added one more for this rose. It looks like it was too lonely, so we're just adding one more there. We're trying to make the composition. We're trying to think that if we're looking from above, this bouquet is gonna look nice and tight, and it has a lot of leaves, and the flowers are all compacted. So that's what we're trying to make with all these kind of leaves. Different textures, different sizes, different colors, different values. It's gonna make the composition more interesting. And then I'm just adding the stems for these lavender flowers, and just connecting them so they don't look like they're floating. So just adding a few more leaves here, a little bit more color. We wanted to pop a little bit. They were kind of lost in the composition, so I'm just adding a little bit more color to them. So I'm doing a little bit of splatter with the lavender color, just to add a little bit more texture to the bottom. But you can add any color that you like. And for this side, I'm doing the same thing, a little bit of splatter with the lavender. But after a good look, I decided that I needed something peeking through the leaves. It was like too plain. So we're gonna use the same lavender color, and we're just gonna fill this in with a little bit more flowers in there. So I'm just getting my colors. We're gonna add some more leaves. And going back to the peony, just adding a little bit more magenta to the center. And it was already dry, so I decided to add some more water so it would blend a little bit. Then a little bit more yellow. Just adding the yellow. It kind of got lost with the dots. It blended too much, so I'm just adding a little bit more touches of yellow. So now we're gonna be adding the lavender flowers. Very simple flowers. I'm just going with the tip of the brush, making some strokes that make it look like petals. You can make any flower that you like, and the composition is supposed to guide you the way you want people to see your painting. So it's supposed to be either a C shape or an S shape. So by putting these flowers on the top, you're gonna start looking from the flowers to the peony, and then you go your way around to where the bottom lavenders are. So this is very simple. Just adding a few strokes, put in the stems with the sap green, and then when it dries completely, we will be adding some yellow to the center. Now I'm adding a little bit more color to it. It's just a little bit darker on my lavender, a little bit more paint than water, and just few touches. Not too much because we don't want to fill them in. We just want a pop of color inside the flowers. And just add a few more mini tiny kind of petals on the side to make it more bigger. And then we're gonna let this dry, and we will go back to the center and to add the center color. In this case, I decided to add yellow, but you can put any color that you like. You can put blue, or you can put brown, or you can put black. I think the yellow is very nice, and it gives this nice touch to your flowers. A little bit more splatter on this side. I'm just putting some yellow. And then with my watercolor pencils, I'm just making some line marks, trying to make these centers pop a little bit more. I'm using my lightest brown, and I'm adding some texture to this flower, just going sideways with my pencil. And then you can blend it with your finger because it's watercolor pencil. So with your finger, you just pass it on top and you blend it nice. Just adding a little bit more color and texture to the petals. And then I'm making some line marks for the petals, kind of dividing where the center is. You can also add it to the outside of the petal. You can add different shape, or you can fix the shape if you don't like the shape. That's up to you what you want to do with your flower. I'm just adding a little bit line marks and blending a little bit so it's not like too hard. Then for the lavender, I pick a lavender blue, and I'm just going outside the petals and making some line marks too. You can go outside the color if you like. That looks very, I would say very cute. But if you want to stick to where the paint is, that's fine. Or you can go outside the petals, it's fine too. It's gonna look really nice. And I'm putting some marks on the inside also, just to give a little bit more texture to these little flowers. If you don't want more texture, you want to leave them the way they were, it is fine also. They look beautiful, and it adds a little bit extra something to the composition. For these flowers, I added a little bit of darker blue. I want them to pop a little bit more. I'm not doing every single one. I'm skipping some and I'm doing some. We don't want to do all of them. We just want a little bit of pop for the flowers. Then I got the darker green and I'm just going outside the leaf, adding some darker colors on my leaf, making the centers. Like I said, you could go outside the color, that's fine. I'm just adding a little bit more to the other side and putting some of the centers. Some of them got lost. When the paint dries, it usually gets lighter, so sometimes they get lost in the painting. So by adding a little bit of darker color just on the outside, it's gonna bring them back together. Adding some of these centers also. And some here on the side. Put in some stems that were missing. Just a few more. Then for the center, it needs a little bit more of a darker color. The center should not have any white, because that's where it should be your darkest color. And just added a little bit more darker green is gonna make the trick. I'm adding a little bit of the pink on my peony, just making some of the petals, not adding too much detail. I think the peony looks fine the way it is, just adding a little bit of a shadow in there. Then a little bit more shadow to my rose to make the contrast a little bit more. Just some areas, not the whole rose. If you don't have watercolor pencils, you can use markers if you have markers, or you can leave it the way it was, or you can go back when it's completely dry. You can go back to your watercolor paint and just use a little bit more of the paint instead of water. So I would use 80% paint, 20% water, and that's gonna make your color darker, so it will pop more into your flower. Adding some more texture to my rose. Then with my marker, this is a black marker, and I'm just gonna make some petal shapes. I want them to pop a little bit more on the top. Remember, this is where we want the viewer to start looking and work their way around. So I'm just adding few strokes, some of my leaves, not all of them. Some of these round pieces. So please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I would really appreciate it. If you like this video, make sure you hit it a like so other people can see it. And we're just doing finishing touches here on these lavender flowers, adding some of this black marker. So thank you so much for watching, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on my next one.